Hello and welcome to Super People 2 settings. As some of you may have already known, Super People 2 just recently released. So I'm going to go over settings that I have. Of course, as with anything that you see, everything here, I believe, is preference. Some things work better than others. I have suggestions for what you should do. But of course, you do whatever feels most comfortable for you. And let's get this going. For my language settings, of course, I speak English. For display mode, I highly recommend playing in a full screen exclusive that will maximize your frames. I play in borderless just because with streaming, I tend to bounce around a lot between monitors and it makes it more easy. But if you want to maximize your frames, make sure you're playing in full screen exclusive. I play in 1080. Temporal upsampling, the way I do things such as upsampling and DLSS and NVIDIA Reflex and all these different things that come with like NVIDIA products or Intel products even, is I just tend to keep them all off, test out my game. If my game feels smooth, I have no problems with optimization and frames. I tend to just not screw with them. And when it comes to upsampling, I kept it on quality. Everything worked out great. You can obviously change it depending on what your performance needs are for your PC. But I kept it on quality and everything has worked out very smooth. DLSS, same thing. Kept it disabled. Everything felt fantastic. Depends on your computer, your setup, your graphics cards. So it's just complete preference. Same thing with NVIDIA Reflex. I do not play with VSync on. I don't really have an issue with screen tearing, so it's not something that ever bothers me. I do have brightness slightly above the minimum. I find that the game gets a little bit too bright for me all the way up top, and I don't have any problems with any shadows or dark areas where I can't actually spot people. On sharpen, I have it set to 2.0, which I believe is the default. I think if you do it all the way to maximum, it just looks a little too sharp, which is kind of weird to say, but if you try it, you'll figure out what I'm talking about. And the lower it is, I feel like it's maybe a little bit not sharp, so I feel like 2.0 is definitely where I found it to be the best. Obviously, it depends on your monitor and your settings. I have a 240 hertz monitor, so I have my maximum frame rate limit set to 240. In the lobby, it's 60 because, well, who cares what your lobby frames are? I might as well save a little bit of hardware usage in the lobby. FPP mode FOV. I have decided to play on 93. Just like a little tip about FOV is the higher it is, the wider you'll be able to see, but the less zoomed in it will be. So it'll be a little bit more difficult to see further targets because they will be smaller at a distance if you have it all the way on max. I play on 93 because I feel like it's just comfortable for me. It's just the right amount of screen wideness, but not restricting my ability to see people from a further distance. Of course, I think this is complete personal preferences. Play with it a bunch, see whatever works for you. When it comes to graphic quality, of course, I feel like this is something completely depends on your system. I play with most things on medium, and my game runs fantastic. I have view distance on high just to make the game look a little bit better. As a streamer, I think some people really like to see, things from a distance, so it's not just all grainy. Same with anti-aliasing. I love having anti-aliasing on high. It really affects the quality of what you see in the game, and I feel like the higher you set it, the better it's going to look. Looks great to me in high, and everything else I keep on medium. Depth of field. I highly recommend turning up depth of field. The only thing it does is make things more blurry when you're scoped in on the sides, and I think it's just completely unnecessary. It hurts gameplay. I don't know why so many video games have it on as default. Highly recommend turn it off. Advanced global illumination. I don't really care about the illumination or the indirect shadows, stuff like that. I just rather tick the performance. Rendering style, I found, is complete preference. This is a recent thing that they've added where you can change the rendering style of the game. If you look at the top right of the screen, you can see how the game does look quite a bit different. I'm not a big fan of intense, but soothing was pretty nice, and so was cozy. In the end, I ended up picking cozy. It just looks the most natural to me, and it feels the best. DirectX 12 for me. If you are having issues with crashing, or if you have lower hardware, I highly recommend trying DirectX 11. There's a good chance it might reduce the amount of crashes you have or increase the performance you have. And that's all my settings for graphics. We're going to jump over to audio. Obviously, my audio is on 0 because I don't want the audio from the game to be playing right now. But normally, It is set to 100, and I adjust the game volume from my Go XLR. Music, I have set to 15. That's just the in-game lobby music. Nothing depends on you whether you like the music or not. SFX, I don't mind having on 100, as same as UI. However, for the announcer voice, I noticed the announcer does talk quite a bit, and it is definitely a little bit frustrating when the announcer is talking when you're trying to listen to someone's footsteps. And I don't really think it's necessary because I can visually see most of the things the announcer is calling out when it does happen. So I turned this down to 10, so it's there, but it's barely audible, and it doesn't bother me. Emo volume I've set 75. I love emotes in games. I think at 100 it was a little bit too loud for me. I think 75 is pretty solid. One thing I highly recommend is if you have voice input and output to 100, your microphone will probably sound way too loud, and other people will probably sound way too loud. Obviously, there's no all chat in the game, but if you do play randoms frequently, I highly recommend screwing with these settings and just turning them down so your mic doesn't blow people's ears out and their mics don't blow your ears out. Obviously, it depends on your mic, but if you ever have teammates, you just ask them, hey, how's my mic sound? And you can adjust that as needed. I have push to talk on. I think I am not an open mic fan. Being able to hear people breathing and their keyboards, I highly recommend having a push to talk button. Put it on your mouse. Put it somewhere convenient for your fingers. It helps a lot for you and your teammates. Obviously, voice channels I have on team, though there's no all chat. And that's what I have for audio. We are going to jump over to controls. I don't use invert because that's crazy. It's not a flying game. Make sure you keep your vertical sensitivity on 50. This is one thing that I had wrong in the first video. If you have it set to 50, it will be set to the default amount, which is it'll go equals left, equals right. It's not unbalanced. I highly recommend keeping it on 50. Unless you've played a lot of battle royales and you know what vertical sensitivity you'd rather play on. General sensitivity, complete absolute preference. I play on 32. I play on 1500 DPI. I'm an alien. Very few people play on DPI that high. Complete absolute preference. I play on 32, but you guys use whatever is good for you. I do have them set to the same amount, just, so that it's equal for everything and that it feels comfortable transitioning from one to the other. I have all my scopes set to the same sensitivity too, though I know some people with bigger scopes like to set less sensitivity if you're using an 8x or a 15x. I don't have an issue with that. I keep it on 32 for everything. I toggle crouch, which is default. To slide, I hold. I changed the hold duration to max because I had a couple moments where I would slide without wanting to. Unintentionally, so I've set it to the longest hold duration so that if I'm really wanting to slide, I'm intentionally holding it for long enough that I'm gonna slide. Everything else here I have on default. I highly recommend for aim and ADS to put things on hold. You'll be able to ADS faster, be able to un-ADS faster. It does come down in the end. Some people do prefer toggle, and I prefer toggle in some other video games. But I do feel like your best chance at improving your gameplay is probably with using hold. Preference, though, it's up to you, and everything else I also have on hold. Let's jump over to key settings. I'm just going to highlight the ones I have different from the default. One thing that I highly, highly, highly recommend is having different buttons for jump and parkour. You never want to vault in a window when you're getting shot and accidentally jump. The way I do it is I have jump only on shift spacebar because whenever I'm jumping, I'm usually sprinting anyways. And parkour I have on spacebar. This prevents me from having to have an extra keybind for parkour. It's completely up to you, but like I said, it's highly recommended to have different buttons for both of these. I keep crouch C on default. Prone for me, Z. It's just what I'm used to. I do lean with Q and E. It feels comfortable for me. I interact with F. Feels great. Obviously, I have this on a different button because I think having change view as V is a waste of a button. V is a very accessible button, so I highly recommend you use it for something that's important rather than change view, because how often are you switching between FPP and TPP? Everything else over here is default. Another huge tip I have: make sure you have different keybinds for aim and ADS. If you have both your keybinds on the same one, you will ADS, aim down sight, slower. Because the game will have to figure out whether you're trying to aim or aim down sight. Even if you don't want to use your aim, which is when you shoot from the hip, just unbind aim scope mode and just put it ADS only. I use left control for aim, which is also my walk button, because usually, you know, if I'm going to aim, it's okay if I'm using a slower pace at the same time, because usually it's close quarters combat. So I have no problem with using it on control. It's what I'm used to. That's what I do, and that's what I recommend. For next weapon, previous weapon, I don't use scroll wheel because I tend to accidentally hit it in high-intensity moments. So I've unbinded it just so I don't do that. I am more than happy with using 1, 2, 3, 4, all that stuff. That's more than happy for me to use. One thing I definitely recommend keybinds is for your active skills, to put it on something convenient for you, whether it's a mouse button or just something that you can move your fingers to quickly, because the skills you use in this game, you use them all the time. So put it on something that's close for your fingers, something you can use super quickly in a pinch. Everything else here is a pretty default for me. I know some people love to have keybinds for specific grenades. I don't do that. I just never have. I should. I don't. If you have extra keybinds, go ahead, be my guest and do that. I moved my emote button to tilde. It's a great button for emotes. I love emotes in games. For those of you who have watched me play PUBG, I use tons of emotes. Tilde is an easy button. I don't use it for anything else. Better than F3, which is the default. Healing items. Complete preference. I highly recommend putting things like first aid and emergency kit on buttons that are convenient for you. Same thing as the other keybinds I've talked about in terms of convenience. I have emergency kit on middle mouse, and I have first aid. I know it says 8, but I have it on a mouse bind, so it's binded to one of my mouse buttons. First aids, you're going to be hitting them all the time, so I make sure that it's something that I have nearby to hit in the pinch of a battle. It's very helpful. Same with bandages. I also have that binded to my mouse. Some people do like to put power bars too on their their mouse or a close key. I don't mind that. I have capsules also on a mouse just for quick convenience. Some people like to, just click in their inventory, and that's okay too. Those are a little bit less important, but I highly recommend having your heals on something convenient for you. Vehicles, I have all these set to default. H is kind of an annoying button for horn, but how often are you using the horn? Not that often. Here is another set of super important keybinds that I highly recommend. Don't use Control 1, Control 2, Control 3, Control 4 for your car. There are two reasons. First of all, there are drive-bys. If you'd like to do a drive-by on someone where you switch from the driver's seat to a different seat to shoot someone while you're driving, it'll be much more convenient to have a single keybind than having to hit two keybinds. It's very difficult to do it when you're having to hit Control 1 while someone's shooting at you. I use WEQT, so driver's seat, seat 2, seat 3, seat 4. I know W is double binded with moving the vehicle forward, but that makes sense, right? Whenever I switch to the driver's seat, I'm immediately moving forward. So as soon as I hit W, I'm already moving forward. So it helps with, making the vehicle go, quicker. It's really cool keybind. It doesn't matter if it's double binded. It works just as well. I have seat 2 on E because seat 2 is the direct passenger seat to the right of the driver's seat, and E is to the right of my W key, so it makes sense. Seat 3 is behind the driver's seat, so Q, it's behind. And then T, I just have for seat 4. Seat 4 is not the most necessary seat tap to switch to, but, I sometimes do switch to seat 4. Another place where this is applicable is if you're with a doofus teammate who likes to drive into teams very often, and he parks the car facing a team, and you have to get out on the opposite side in order to avoid getting melted. If you end up jumping out on the wrong side, you might die. But if you end up having convenient keybinds, you might actually survive. So that's another situation where I think having these bindings to something that's convenient for you will make a huge difference. I have my push-to-talk for in-game on K, which I do have on a mouse. Of course, I don't reach over to hit K. I don't use push-to-talk in this game very often. Defaults on all these. I don't expand the minimap because I just don't find it necessary. I'm sure some people use it. I would rather just open my map. I have world map binded to N as well, because a lot of the times I would hit N when trying to hit M, so I might as well just have them both work. I know some people like to put their map on a more convenient button. M works for me. I haven't had any issues with it. That's what I do. Obviously, I use tab for inventory. Some people do like to put a keybind for that. I've unbinded settings because I'd rather just hit escape to do that. Most of these are all default. One thing I have different is using smart ping. That's, when you ping something, this guy's at a rock. Let me mark the rock. I have that on V. V is a convenient button. It's right next to my thumb. I can use it in the heat of battle. Some people use mouse buttons. Some people use other things. V seems to be what I'm used to and what I think works well for me. All these are pretty much set to default. These are replay and this is spectate, but there's one more thing here that I only recently noticed that I didn't know was a thing. If you scroll all the way down past replay, which I'm sure very few people do, there's another set of keybinds called class skills. And if you change this to enable, you can change specific class abilities to specific binds. I haven't got around to doing this yet. I only recently found this out a few days ago that this was, dumped basically at the bottom of the key settings. I never noticed it before. But as you can see, with specific classes, you can set specific buttons for things. If there's a class you love playing, a class you play all the time, especially with Super People 2, now classes are free. If there's something that's... Server maintenance in 30 minutes. If there's something that you think you use more frequently than something else and you want to move it to a different keybind, it's down here. Make sure to take a look at this. Maybe there's something that you think would be on a better keybind. I wish I knew about this earlier. Apparently, it's been in the game for a decent amount of time, but I had no clue. So make sure you scroll all the way down to your key settings, and if you want to change these, they're right here. For the last section, which is a gameplay, just going to hop back right into this. Crosshair color. I choose red just because I feel like it contrasts more than some of the other color choices. Obviously, this is one of those things I think is complete preference. You can also completely customize your crosshair if you enable this and decide which kind of color scheme you want for your crosshair. I think red works great for me. It contrasts well enough, and that's what I go with. For firing mode, I say if a gun has a full auto mode, I put it into full auto. If you're picking up a gun and there's some guy right next to you, you would rather it be in full auto off the bat than having to switch the fire mode after you pick it up. So I would say if there's any gun that will have a full auto mode, I definitely would just set it to full auto so that you have it full auto right away. I have auto reload on disable. I prefer to reload when I want to reload. I don't want the game to reload for me, especially if I'm like trying to switch guns or something, trying to do some other action. So I prefer to reload on my own. Some people are okay with having auto reload on enable. I choose disable. For the inventory, just a couple preference things: scroll speed, sorting method, hiding your vest, your helmet, your backpack if you want to, highlight your cosmetics and stuff. Stuff's not super important. Hiding your nickname, some people, might want to hide their name in the kill feed, especially streamers. You have that option. Country flags, completely up to you. In-game settings regarding the HUD and stuff. I have pretty much everything set to default. I don't think any of these is unimportant enough to turn off. However, for hold down to acquire, I think this is a really good new feature that they've added, where you have to hold down your interaction key in order to pick up something that's of a lesser level than what you're currently holding. For example, if you run over a level 2 helmet and you have a level 4, you have to hold down if you legitimately want that level 2 helmet. So it'll prevent you from accidentally switching out. I think this is super, super convenient. Make sure you enable this. It'll help a lot with not accidentally picking up gear that you don't actually want. Otherwise, everything else here I have on default. These are the consumable highlights. So say you have 6 emergency kits, you'll no longer see emergency kits highlighted on the ground. I have these set to complete preference. I don't like seeing things highlighted. It's kind of distracting for me. So I set these pretty low for what I believe, especially ammo, since there's ammo everywhere. This complete personal preference, just, set the amount you think is right for your setup and go with it. I do auto-use bandages. I don't recommend auto-use first aids, especially if you're, someone who likes to use a first aid in a close fight, try to get one off before your opponent completely pushes. I prefer just to manually do it. So I, maybe get one first aid off and then re-push again, even if I'm not full HP. So I have that on disabled, as well as mercy kits. I highly recommend having auto climb ladders on disable. You don't want to run past a ladder on accident and then start climbing it and then maybe get shot in the back because you're on a ladder you never meant to be on. So highly recommend disable on that one. This is for the custom item palettes. I don't use the custom item palette. It's the keybind button that opens up a little palette thing where you can pick to use one of these items. I know some people love using these kinds of things. I have them set up, but I don't use it that often. Complete preference. If you're someone who doesn't have that many keybind options, not enough mouse buttons, I think the palette is a great thing to use for you. And that's everything. If you guys have any questions, I stream every day at twitch.tv/ObiWannCoyote. Link is down below in the description. I'll answer whatever questions you got, Super People related. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.